All right, welcome everybody. The mayor won't be joining us for work session, but may be here during council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Corliss. Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willets.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
Alrighty, we have one item on our work session agenda today. We have the geothermal extension policy, and we'll have Tina Riley from Public Works presenting. Tina, take it away.
Council member and council president, thank you. So my name's Tina Riley. I am geothermal development coordinator at the city. I have been at the city around 10 months, and I have the awesome job of helping to grow our geothermal system. Today, I am going to be sharing some information on a proposed replacement to our geothermal extension policy. This policy was put in place in the 2014 timeframe, and we're looking at replacing it. This is going to be a consent item next week. And so today I'm sharing information, looking for feedback, comments, and also giving the opportunity for any questions that you may have. So our existing policy incentivizes customers to connect onto our geothermal system with extension costs reimbursed through a billing credit for geothermal heat. This policy enabled rapid growth of our geothermal system. It was put in place, as I mentioned, 2014 timeframe. We had at least a dozen to 15 customers who connected during that period. So a very successful pilot program, and it resulted in delayed revenue while the city of Boise was required to operate and maintain that new infrastructure. So the proposed policy requires customers to pay for the connection unless otherwise agreed to by the city. So this allows growth to pay for growth. It enables a greater focus on revenue generation for our operations, maintenance, and system replacement. It better aligns geothermal with other utilities, so it's less of a pilot program. And it also enables flexibility for strategic growth initiatives. What I want to do to help provide context for this decision is to really pull up to the 30,000-foot level and share some context on really what our geothermal vision is and what we're looking to achieve. So here's our vision. It's to grow the city of Boise geothermal system to create maximum community and climate benefit in a way that protects the resource for many generations to come. As part of this, we have 4 strategic initiatives or priorities. So the first one is water rights. So this is securing available water rights for growth. The second is infrastructure modernization. And so this is a term we use around system replacement of aging infrastructure and is associated with the system reliability. The third is customer demand, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then finally, it's also policy that enables us to grow the system and also to have financial stability. We are in great shape with regards to customer demand and policy. John and I shared several months ago that we are seeing a lot of demand for our system. We have around 17 customers that we're talking to, and there are so many benefits. It's a clean, sustainable, affordable, local form of energy, and so we see a lot of interest in our system. Policy is within our control, so that's also in good shape. The 2 priorities that are our key focus areas are water rights, that we are actively working, and infrastructure modernization. And the policy replacement that we are proposing is specifically focused on infrastructure modernization, as it enables additional revenue to help us take steps towards modernizing our system. So this slide summarizes the policy elements, the existing policy, and what we're wanting to replace those elements with. So there were 3 different types of ways that a customer could connect onto the system. So the first is a system connection to the main line. So this is a customer who is adjacent to the main line of our system who says, I want to connect on. That customer had up to 5 years to recoup the cost of that connection that they paid for upfront with these billing credits towards the geothermal heat. The second is a mainline extension with no system benefit. So this is a customer who required an extension of the geothermal system. So maybe it was a block, multiple blocks, and they were the only recipient of that benefit. So in that instance, they had up to 10 years to recoup the costs. The third is a mainline extension with system benefits. So this is a customer who, in the process of providing an extension of our system, it enabled additional customers to connect onto the system or other benefits such as hydraulic benefits, etc. We are looking to replace these 3 different categories with language that says customer pays for connection or extension unless otherwise agreed to by the city. Our intent with this language around unless otherwise agreed to by the city is exceptional circumstances where the financial benefit and the ultimate benefit to the utility is so substantial that it makes sense for the city to look at alternative arrangements around a connection. We also had a policy element around commitment where if a customer or potential customer was to provide an application, we provided a commitment to them. The challenge that we found is that customers were not obligated to connect onto the system. And so a little bit of a one-way relationship where we were providing a commitment and holding valuable geothermal capacity when a customer may or may not connect. So they were often keeping us as an option. We have now proposed language where there is a contract between the city of Boise and the customer outlining the obligations of each party. We also have changed the application fee. It was $75 and we've increased it to $150 so that the cost is more commensurate with the actual cost of what it is to the city as we take this through the various departments to provide the approval.
Madam Mayor. Just a question about sort of that situation, except as agreed to by the city of Boise. Can you give me like an example of what that might be?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, so an example might be if we had a potential area of growth that we could see a substantial number of additional customers interested in that it would not benefit just one customer, but quite a number of customers. Maybe it's a block extension and we've got 7 different businesses potentially interested in that. When we looked at the numbers, if the numbers financially penciled out to have a significant net positive financial impact to our system and a growth of the system that would benefit the utility, that would be one example of something that we would look at how we could fund it.
Great. Thank you for that extra explanation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. What I want to do is just step through what the financial implications are to the city of this policy change, as well as what the financial implications are to the customer. So when we look at the implications to us, we are an enterprise fund, and so we sell water to our customers that generates revenue that covers all of our operations, our maintenance, and partially funds system replacement. So we've been bringing in around about $200,000 to $300,000 a year that goes towards system replacement. The revised policy enables revenue in the first year. So I talked about those delays, right? There was a 5-year, a 10-year, or an unlimited period of time for a delay for getting revenue. The revised policy would bring that revenue forwards. So we have additional revenue earlier that ultimately goes towards the system replacement. So we increase that fund essentially. This takes steps in the right direction for our geothermal. I do want to highlight it does not get us all the way down. We still have a significant amount of work to do, and we are working to identify additional funds, grants, philanthropic funds, etc. And that is still a need that we have for our system. This does, however, continue to help position us to take steps towards modernization. With regards to a new customer, there is a really broad range of potential costs to the customer and payback period, depending on their unique situation. But what I did is just came up with an average example of a small to medium-sized customer who's adjacent to the system. So typically, this would cost on average around $15,000 for a connection. When we look at the alternative that they have with natural gas, if they put in an efficient system, the current payback period is 6 to 7 years. One thing I really want to note is that natural gas prices are very volatile, and our system prices have been very predictable. And so even if you just go back a few years, that payback period would have been 2 to 3 years. And so that's just something we want to keep in mind. This does not include any carbon value that a customer might attribute to it. And we are starting to see customers factor that into their calculations. The key feedback that we have gotten from potential customers has been more around system reliability and wanting to understand the statistics than it has been around concerns around paying for connection upfront. So we have tested this with customers, and we have shared that this is the direction we're wanting to go. And while I am sure that there will be some customers who make a decision not to connect to the system because of this, we find that all the benefits that I listed before, that is still front of mind for customers around clean energy that's sustainable, that aligns often with their values. And so I don't think that we are going to necessarily see customers make a decision not to connect as a result of this policy change. So this slide is the final slide, and it summarizes then, now, and the gaps. And so our existing policy, I think it was a great policy that got brought in 2014 timeframe that was right for the time as part of our geothermal pilot program to really help incentivize growth of our utility. And it was a time when customers were primarily focused on economics. Our proposed policy change is now really aligning our utility so that growth pays for growth and is more aligned with other utilities that we have in the city, such as sewer. It increases we're seeing an increase by customers of a focus on climate and clean energy and also on reliability. And so it really lines up with those while enabling additional revenue so that we can focus on modernization. And then I do just want to keep up here the remaining gap, that there are still additional funds that are needed for modernization. And that is still something that we do continue to work. So with that, are there any questions or any feedback or comments that anyone would like to provide?
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
thank you for the presentation. As I recall, when you presented a few months ago, Boise and Iceland pretty close in terms of our ability with geothermal. Do I recall that correctly? Okay. One of my questions is, how vast can we make this system? I mean, it is such a benefit for us. And is this only limited by infrastructure, or is it actually limited by geology within the city of Boise?
Madam Mayor, council member. So the geothermal system, there are a number of limitations. So the ultimate capacity of the system is really related to the geology and the thermal capacity of that system. From what we've seen so far, we have not seen thermal decay in our larger system, and it appears to be a very robust system. So I think that from that standpoint, there is still a significant ability to grow the system. There are other constraints. So we continue to work water rights. We require a water right in order to be able to grow our system. And so that is something that we are actively working. And then also modernizing the system enables us to have a reliable system that also becomes foundational for additional growth as well. So that is something else that is kind of front and center currently to enable us to position ourselves for future growth. Does that answer your question?
Madam Mayor, so hypothetically, could we use geothermal with, everyone use geothermal within the city of Boise city limits? Or would it only be limited to certain areas of Boise?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, there are limitations to the geographical extent. There is uncertainty with how far you could push that. Certainly, as you go along the foothills and you head up kind of that hill road direction, there is that's essentially the extent of the known geothermal aquifer that we are plumbed into. As you head towards the bench, for example, you're starting to get further away from that. And so the geology is such that you are not as proximal to that. And the cost to try and get the water up there, the thermal, decay in the pipes, it becomes more limiting. So there is going to be a geographical limitation that is an overprint to that, yes.
Madam Mayor. So thank you so much for your presentation. Really great. And I really appreciated that question. You talked about how the extent to which the geothermal aquifer extends to the kind of northwest. How about to the southeast?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, so yes, we also see it continue down to the southeast as well, and southwest. Sorry, yeah.
And about how far are we talking? Like Lucky Peak? Are we along the foothills still? Or?
So we have limited geological data to constrain that. We know that there are a handful of wells in the area that penetrate that deeper aquifer. The extent to which it goes down in that direction is tough. There are wells at Harris Ranch, so we know it continues as far as there, and how much further it extends past that, I think there's still some uncertainty.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. So our current policy we have right now seems like a pretty smoking hot deal for most places who want to hook up. Are people, are they knocking down the door right now? I mean, are people requesting more than we have the capacity to give with our certain water rights? What's the demand right now?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, we are talking with a number of businesses right now. As I mentioned, there's 17 different groups that are interested. Some of those are very substantial developments. And yes, if everyone was to come in, that would exceed what we currently have the ability to provide from a water rights standpoint. What we find is that potential customers, they run the numbers, they look at different scenarios, they look at their options. Not all of those 17 are going to materialize. We will find that some do and some don't. And so we are working really hard to identify potential water rights, to look at how we can continue to work to meet the demand that we're seeing in our city. Because we think it's such a valuable resource and has such a broad community benefit that we do want to help encourage that. I think I don't know that this incentivized connection, I don't know that that's necessarily the tipping point as to whether these different businesses would make a decision to connect or not. Often, as I said before, it's aligned with their values, and that factors in as well.
Great. And Madam Mayor, maybe I'll just kind of offer my own perspective. I think this is a great direction to go. I think it makes a lot of sense from a sustainability standpoint for the city. I think that continuing to explore different grant opportunities, which I know you all are doing on a regular basis, to help fund some of those other costs as we, still have some to achieve there, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that, if year from now, 2 years from now, we're finding a really hard time getting people to hook up, one, you sort of have a little bit of an exemption on there to be able to work with people strategically, but we could always reevaluate to see if this wasn't the direction. But if we feel like that people are committed and that there's enough demand and people are wanting to, reach their own climate goals, and while we're looking for additional water rights, I think that this makes a lot of sense to move in a more sustainable direction.
Madam Mayor, one more. maybe this is the wrong question to ask for you, but in terms of it sounds like you're having interested customers approaching you. Is there also a proactive effort, maybe at the planning stage or other things, and kind of presenting this option to maybe new development, or is there anything like that going on that's more proactive?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, so to some extent, yes. I think while we have such significant demand, and we do have some constraints that we're working, that we haven't pressed on that as much as what we would if there were unlimited constraints on some of those other areas. I'd love to see us continue to grow this as much as we could. I think it's such a great resource that we have access to here. And I think as we continue to work on some of these areas around infrastructure modernization, water rights, some of these key priorities, I think as we work those, I think we'll then be able to get in a better position to then be even more proactive. Yes.
All right, thanks for your work on this. Thanks to the whole team. Appreciate the presentation and the direction we're headed. Thanks. And that's it right now, exactly. All right, we'll recess until 6 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.